Nobody wanted this. That seems to be the rumor swirling around the development process of the sequel of Ghost of Tsushima, Ghost of Yte, that just recently had a gameplay footage presentation that reached the expectations of fans and let down a lot of fans as well. And I think that is the general sentiment that we're seeing online, where people are saying, okay, I am excited about the Ghost of Yte sequel, but I'm also let down by it because it's doing all the industry standard things that we have been seeing from Western gaming for the past decade or so, where the game is losing its focus on good story, gameplay, characterization, and focusing on representation, gender politics, and racial differences, because that has been the main theme in the gaming industry for the past decade or so, ever since politics became the main focus due to worldly issues outside of its control. And I think that is a situation that we're seeing right now with Ghost of Yte. Ghost of Yte, if you're out of the loop, is a game developed by Sucker Punch Productions, published by Sony Entertainment, an exclusive game that usually comes out on Sony. It's not a direct sequel starring the main character from the initial Ghost of Tsushima game, Jin Sakai. Instead, it's set in a different period, a forward into the future, 1603, around Mount Yotei in Hokkaido, Japan, which is the northern part of Japan. The protagonist is Atsu, a female ronin on a quest for vengeance. The trailer showed some good visuals, dual-wielding katanas, and mechanics that are interesting. Of course, some people complain that it's a little bit unrealistic, but of course, this is a game and it's not supposed to be based in realism. But other people are saying, yes, that is the case because this is a game that was supposed to be focused on realism. And I think that bit about the realism of this game is important because this game was founded on realism. And I think what we're seeing with this overall change in direction is showing that they're changing their focus. It's not about the realistic world of Japan. It's about the idealization of personal politics that they want to espouse in a game. And that is the sentiment that we're hearing from developers themselves, at least rumor-wise, where they're saying they were pushed in this direction by outside forces. Some would say this is Sweetbaby Inc. Others are saying that is just the general direction of the gaming industry as a whole. But the rumor is that Sucker Punch kind of gutted and repurposed the Ghost of Tsushima sequel, that they changed it in its entirety to be a representation game, a game that was supposed to be focused on Jin Sakai or some element that is related to that world, was repurposed to be something more about the modern era of gaming, where it's not about the games anymore, it's about the politics that you want to tell the gamer. And I think that's what we're seeing right now, where the rumor alleges that Sucker Punch Productions, the developers of Ghost of Tsushima and the upcoming Ghost of Yte, gutted and repurposed and replanned Ghost of Tsushima sequel and created Ghost of Yte out of its bones. And I think this is in line with what we see a lot of elements in the gaming industry, where we see games that are focused on generic sequels of characters that are changed and repurposed to be something about a modern day activist political messaging tool. And I think that's what we see with a lot of titles that have come out these past few years. We saw it with Spider-Man 2, we saw it with The Last of Us 2, we saw it with so much titles. We see Ratchet and Clank, we see it with Uncharted, we see it with so much titles, Dragon Age Veilguard. We see these titles that were about something else become entirely about the modern day political messaging of today when it comes to racial, gender politics. And I think that is the thing that we're seeing with Ghost of Yte. Even when you look at the deeper details of the game itself, Ghost of Yte is about a mythical warrior female character that wasn't really talked about in the history books. When you look at the historical context of this character, is because she's supposed to be representing an Ainu people, a warrior tribe of women that there is no evidence of them. And the historical context that we're getting from people in Japan about this are from activists who have no evidence. They're just saying all evidence was lost in history. That's why we don't know if these warriors, we have nothing because of the wars. There's no evidence of them, but I feel that they're true. That is the basic PhD level dissertation. I feel this is true. And I think that is the thing that we're seeing right now a lot in the gaming world. That's what we saw with Assassin's Creed Shadows. People feeling that it was right to have a black samurai. And I think that is not the basis of history that people account for as valid. And I think that's what we're seeing right now with Ghost of Tsushima. And I think that is the foundation of this game as well. And it makes sense when you look at some of the rumors where even Sony seems to be kept in the dark because they don't have control over Sony of the West. They are mad that the changes happened and they were kind of blindsided by the changes and they can't even change it, at least according to some of the information that we're seeing right now in the rumors. And I don't even think this is even a problem until we saw the character design. Once we saw the character design, a lot of gamers had their red flags pointed up because we've seen this character design almost everywhere in gaming. It's the basic NPC design that we see for a lot of female characters. We saw it in Horizon Zero Dawn. We see it in Spider-Man 2, where they take a female character, make her into a block of wood that you wouldn't even notice if they were not in the forefront of the game. And I think that's what we see with so much female characters nowadays, where they just look like people that you wouldn't even notice in the game if they weren't the lead character. And I think that is a situation we keep seeing with a lot of properties where they just don't want to make unique and eye-catching characters. And I think that is the thing that you get from this overall representation of Ghost of Tsushima, where they have a character that just doesn't seem to be actually uniquely made to capture the attention of a fan base that is trying to be amazed and ensnared into a fantasy world. And I think this is what you see with so much character designs and makeups, where it's just all about the activism and removing the game player from the fantasy of gaming and trying to bring him to the harsh reality. And it's kind of stunning to see this, especially when you see better representations of these characters from other video games. And I know people always bring up this comparison between Stellar Blade and other titles. Of course, he doesn't need to look like Eve from Stellar Blade, but it helps if you have an adequately designed character. And I think that brings a lot of eyes to your game. But of course, that is an impossibility with the people they cast. They cast an activist to be the voice of the character. When you have an activist that looks like this, and you have the mindset of developers that refuse to make a character look unique or different, or even adjust the character model that you've chosen to make them actually look appealing to the mass audience, that is the reaction you're going to get. You're going to get a downgraded NPC looking model. I think that is the foundation of these NPC looking character models that we see. They're just taking the voice actor who looks like nobody and they're just transporting their face into the game. And I think that is just not the case in the past, where you may have a voice model, but you make the character look completely different. And that is just not happening anymore. And that's why people are making fun of some of the character designs for this game, where we see the actor trying to actually play out some of the role. And it's just comical to look at them, where you're just like, okay, you really just took her and put her in the game and she doesn't look that interesting in real life. And you're trying to make that character interesting in a game for gamers, which is a predominantly male audience. And something that we see the opposite of happening overseas, where we have these character models taken from the game and they don't look exactly like them in the face, but body and overall character model wise, they do look similar. I think this is what you see with Eve and Stellar Blade. Eve looks like the model that they chose for her. And I think that is the thing that we're seeing now in the gaming world, where we're seeing the stark differences between East and West. And I think Sony is showing those reflections of differences so much more so with this casting of Ghost of Yte. And I think that is the thing that is shocking gamers. Beyond that, we just have terrible writers for the game. When you look at the foundation of the game, the writers are from the worst games that have come out these past few years. We have Mass Effect Andromeda, Dragon Age Veilguard, Anthem. The writers of failed projects are coming onto this game and developing some of the worst pieces of art that we're capable of seeing. And we're supposed to trust them with this game that had a great predecessor in Ghost of Tsushima. And I think when we look at all the details of the people working at Sucker Punch, working on this game, we just get a feeling that we have an activist mindset that has suddenly taken over the entire company. And we have people that are more focused on their pronouns rather than actually producing a great game. And I think that is the thing that gamers are worried about, because if we saw content previously from people like this that made great games, we wouldn't be worried. But we've been seeing so much terrible games from this type of development team that have a hyper focus on things outside of gaming that we expect the worst. And I think when you see a rainbow flag and pronouns in a bio, you can expect the worst, because we saw Dragon Age Veilguard, we saw Forspoken, we saw Dustborn, we saw so much other titles like Concord that done the same thing, and they produced terrible content. So that's why I expect terrible content from Sucker Punch right now. If this is their representation, that's what I'm going to see. And of course, we always see that photo focus on the female staff. Of course, these are not the main developers, but still, it just shows what they are focused on in the development room. They're not really caring about games. They're thinking about, we have representation. Look at it. We're cool. I'm like, okay. You really don't care about the game that you're making. And I think that is the result that we're seeing right now, where gamers are looking at previous titles from this production team and they're thinking, okay, we're in a different world right now. This is not the same production team, and we're going to get different content. And I think when you look at Eastern titles and what they're producing, you just automatically see the stark differences. And I think those stark differences are showing, especially since we have so much successful Eastern titles coming out, where we look at Ghost of Yte and the character model and we're like, okay, this is the usual terrible Western slop that we're used to, and they're never going to get away from it. And I think when you see the comparisons other fan edits are making to this character design, it's just even more obvious the failure of the people producing the game. And of course, it's on purpose. These people can make something better, but it's intentional. And I think that intention is made clearer by the fan edits of this character that are just obviously superior. Because if we saw these character designs inside the game, we would actually enjoy the game a little bit more. We would be like, okay, they're making an effort to do something. Yeah, it's not really realistic. Who cares? We know the first one was realistic. This is not going to be that. But they are making an effort to actually pull me into the game. And when we notice that effort is not being put into the game, we're kind of put off. And you have examples of this in gaming and even in TV. And you saw the disastrous Last of Us out there for HBO. You lost the audience because you just made a character that had absolutely no resemblance to the original character in the game. And I think that's the same thing with gaming as well. And I think that's the situation that we're seeing right now. Kind of a downgrade of a lot of titles. And it seems to be a trend in the gaming industry. We saw this happen with Ratchet and Clank, Last of Us. We saw it with Uncharted. We see it with Devil May Cry. We see it with so much titles where they're just trying to replace and change the character, usually male, because they have a messaging that they want to put out for a female audience, which is the minority of gamers. So it's just kind of a weird thing to see, but that is what gaming has devolved into. It's a messaging cycle now that people are trying to put out their political messaging through gaming. They're trying to change the minds of gamers because gamers apparently have a lot of influence in society. I think a lot of gamers from the Gamergate era, what happened to the people that hated that era, that went on in 2016 changing the entire election in the world, and now we see people trying to change gamers because they feel like, hey, they influence the world very much so, and we got to influence them. And I think this is a reflection of that steady push to change the gaming world, the gaming landscape, and hopefully society as well. I know it sounds like I'm giving gamers too much credit, but I think gamers have that much influence in the world, and I think that's why people are trying to grab hold of the mind of gamers. But that's just my 2 cents on the situation, and I think Ghost of Yte reflects that sentiment. Maybe I'm wrong. You tell me what you think about the situation. I'd like to hear your thoughts. Like, share, subscribe. This is Wagner Knows Why. Catch you next time.